The London Bridge attack barely 2 months ago put terrorism and security right at the heart of the general election campaign. In a brutal 5 minutes, Jack Merritt and Saskia Jones were stabbed to death. Their killer, Usman Khan, was a convicted terrorist who was out of prison on licence. As Home Secretary Priti Patel watched specialist firearms officers in a simulation, she outlined the sentencing changes designed to tackle the real thing.
Those offenders that have obviously been perpetrating terrorist offences will be enforced to effectively serve their full time behind bars in prison. And on top of that, and this links to the atrocity that we saw in London Bridge and at Fishmongers Hall last year, we will ensure that we increase sentences to 14 years for the offenders that are involved in planning terrorist offences.
The measures to be introduced in March include a £90 million yearly increase for counter-terror police. An extra £500,000 will be spent on supporting the victims of terrorism. The plans also outline more specialist psychologists and trained imams to assess the risk radicalised offenders pose. But controversially, terrorists could be forced to take a lie detector test to prove they're not planning another attack.
We've already used polygraphs and lie detectors in the context of serious sexual offenders. We've been using them for about 7 years or so. They're part of an approach. They're not the sole basis upon which we assess risk. I think it's right that we introduce the law to allow it to be used in terrorism offences.
University student Travis Fain was hit by the 4x4 being driven by the Westminster Bridge attacker. He suffered a broken leg and says the emotional aftercare for those who had their lives destroyed by terrorism was limited.
I think there is an assumption broadly across the country that after an attack, people affected by that attack will be supported 100% because it seems to be the bare minimum that you would expect. Sadly, that isn't always the case. So I hope that despite it only being a small part of this announcement, I hope that really is taken up.
It's an attempt to show public protection is at the top of the agenda. But would these measures have prevented what happened here?
Julian's here. We heard there about the victim support, but going back to the lie detectors on terrorists, how would that be used and when would it be used?
It's not completely clear, but the plan is to mainly do it when someone's been released from prison. They'll be questioned about their activities and their licence conditions. The Justice Secretary just then saying this has been done with sex offenders for several years. These devices, they measure heart rate and blood pressure and breathing to see if someone's being deceptive. Hugely controversial, though, of course. Huge doubts about their accuracy, not least on various TV programmes recently. The plan, though, today has been condemned by the father of Jack Merritt, who died in the London Bridge attack in November. David Merritt says lie detector tests are at best unreliable, and he says it's all admission of failure by the government.
All right.